We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark. Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 50 or close, with a goal to help us all live our happiest, most fulfilling, and productive lives now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved and we need to get going now. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Gabrielle Pimstone, a woman whose work I admire. After dedicating 27 years to corporate psychology, a podcast encounter sparked a life-altering shift. Now as an energy coach, Gabrielle Pimstone teaches powerful techniques for healing, navigating life transitions, and overcoming burnout. Her mission is to help people find joy and fulfillment in personal transformation and to experience the gratification of self-discovery, progress, and change. Welcome, Gabrielle. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's wonderful to be here, and hello to your listeners from Sydney, Australia.
So, Gabrielle, let's just get started with me asking you this question. Do you experience getting older? And if you do, what is that experience? And if you don't, why do you think it is that you don't?
Wow, I mean, that is a deep question to answer at 6 a.m., but I'm going to give it a go. Yes, I experience growing older in two kind of opposite ways. Physically, I feel like I'm getting older. I've got more aches and pains. I do a lot of exercise. I'm not healing from my injuries as quickly and so forth. But on a personal growth journey and spiritually, I am finding myself advancing in ways that I could never have done when I was younger. So, yeah, I definitely feel it in both innately, but also really incredibly empowering ways.
It's interesting, Gabrielle, because I have asked close to 200 women that question, and I bet you 95% of them say something just like you said.
Oh, that's great.
That, yeah, my body, I have some more. But other than that, I feel empowered. I feel, stronger. I feel more me. I feel, whatever it is. But the only way they really feel like they're getting older is some physical changes, which will happen to all of us,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually really encouraging to hear that most of the people that you've interviewed are feeling they're stepping into an era of authenticity, empowerment, self-empowerment, self-worth, self-care. That's where I'm at.
It's just our society in general hasn't caught up with that.
Correct.
As you can see in advertising and movies and television and everything, we're still not depicted that way, and it's just not the way it is. Absolutely. So let me ask you, you worked for 27 years in corporate, and that would have been a very, in its own way, safe environment. Why did you decide to leave that and start working as an energy coach?
Well, it's a great question. It was safe, enjoyable, fulfilling. I'm using the words productive, all the words you used in your description, for about just over 20 years. But for the last 5 years of it, it was an incredibly unsafe place to be. It was an interesting thing because I got to a point in my life where I'd evolved in my own journey, and I started to see things in the corporate world, Sarah, that were always there and I knew were there, but I hadn't really paid much attention to. They hadn't affected me. Two things in particular: corporate politics, which it was interesting that for so many years I wasn't affected by that, because that was the area that I worked in. From a psychological perspective, coming in to facilitate disagreements, misunderstandings, get people onto the same page, really root out dysfunctional behavior. So, but for some reason, in 2020, during the pandemic, could have been a combination of isolation from the pandemic, but also being in a particularly toxic work environment. My eyes opened up to that. And that was the one. And the other thing was just corporate bureaucracy, which really impacted me in the end, because as I moved through my career, I wanted to start making more of an impact. And it's so difficult getting things done in a corporate world. Everything has to move at a glacial pace: procedure, policy, sign off. And also trying to work with 60,000 people or 30,000 people, which is, the average size of a really large corporation, which I used to work with. It's really a losing proposition. So I started, it wasn't actually fulfilling, and it certainly wasn't safe in the end. But I was deeply depressed. 2020, as I said, I took a job in a bank. Within a week, I knew I made a grave mistake. I was stressed. I wasn't sleeping. My thyroid had flared up. I was completely isolated from the world around me because I had no energy to interact with people. And I took myself off for a walk, and I listened to a podcast. A woman was talking about her own journey with anxiety, which had been my lifelong struggle. And listening to her words really, opened me up to what I call the invisible spiritual prison that I've been living in, meeting, daily responsibilities, doing the right thing, living a conventional life, but feeling very disillusioned, disempowered, and deeply depressed. And it was from that podcast that I realized I got to make a change in my life.
That was a very brave thing to do. For those of us who have gone through that, I think we understand, and this sounds so trite, but it's true, that the only thing scarier than that was to stay where we were.
100%. It's not trite at all.
I was in a wonderful company, in a wonderful job, and it still took me close to a year to heal from all that. And I think that as women in our 40s, 50s, 60s, we get to a point where we are naturally starting to go through a change, and not just menopause. I think we see things we didn't see before. We're affected by things we weren't affected by before. And we come to a point of what?
What? It was a really, for me, it took, years, 5 years to really work this out. But it was like a veil had been taken, it was slowly being removed. And bit by bit, the dark underbelly of this corporate life that becomes so entrenched in my reality, my identity, it was being revealed to me. I heeded the call eventually, but it took a lot to get me out of that discomfort zone because it wasn't a comfortable place to be, to your point. And eventually it was the pain of staying overrode the pain of moving on and moving forward.
So can you explain for all of us who are listening to you, what is energy mastery, and how can it benefit individuals going through some of these major life transitions that we're talking about?
Well, that's a great question. So energy mastery, the way that I have defined it, but maybe let's just roll back a bit, because energy is everything. We are made up of energy. Our thoughts are nothing but energy. Our emotions that are created from our thoughts are nothing but energy. The actions that we take, the decisions we make as a result of our emotional state, all have an energetic stamp. And ultimately, the stories that we tell ourselves and who we become are created from this invisible kind of world of energy. And it's often a very downward spiral, and it's often very low vibrational stories that we tell ourselves. So what I teach people is how to master, yes, their thoughts, yes, their emotions, all of that stuff, but at an energetic level, how to do 5 things: how to understand your energetic state, how to protect your energy from environmental stimuli and influences, how to clear your energy, because we all walk around with these energy blocks. They're invisible, but they're very, very powerful. How to maintain your energetic vibration, because we dip up and down, but how do you make sure the dips are caught in time? And how do you optimize your energy? Because we have latent potential that's sitting dormant in us. I teach people with advanced techniques how to activate and release that. So those 5 energy masteries: understanding, protecting, clearing, managing, and optimizing your energy. Now, how it links to moving through transformation is that if we do all of that and we get ourselves clear of our energy blocks, we get into, most of the time, a high vibration. We are operating at a particular level in life. Now, when adversity hits and when change hits, which can be really trying, that requires of us to be really resilient. And when your vibration is high, you don't just bounce back from adversity quicker. You actually, when adversity strikes, you come off a higher base. So it doesn't affect you as deeply, and you move through it with greater resilience, ease, and flow. So that's the link between mastering your energy and moving through change.
Oh, I love that, Gabrielle. How do you help people identify their energy blocks?
Well, the sign that you've got an energy block is if you have a recurring pattern in your life that you can't quite figure out. You can't quite, it's dogged you your whole life. You've had a particular dynamic around a particular thing in your life. You can't work out what it is. You can't shift it. It's like this invisible handbrake that's holding you back in life. That's how you identify it. So what I do is, when I work with my clients, is mostly it's in coaching, over a series of months. We spend a lot of time up front, at least, a quarter of the process is spent really excavating, digging under the hood, working out what this invisible thing is, and most importantly, where it stems from. Because I work with energy roots and I clear them. I go back to the inception point. Where did it start? What was that traumatic event in childhood? What happened potentially in the womb to your mother that was transferred onto you? What was passed on from your grandparents to your parents to you? Because energy blocks can be transgenerational. So we work out what the pattern is, what it looks like. That's the presenting issue. But we go back to the inception point, and that's where I clear. So it's a process of inquiry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Can you give us an example of somebody you worked with, and what the block looked like and what you did for them or with them?
Yeah, I sure can. I'm just trying to pick an interesting one. I mean, they're all interesting, but here's an unusual one. So I actually worked with somebody who had really dysfunctional relationship patterns, Sarah. So in the sense that ever since they were a child, they were very clingy, very emotionally needy. They had an insatiable need to be acknowledged, seen, really coddled in relationships. And this moved right into their adulthood, and it was a hallmark of their romantic relationship as well. And the relationship with their children, very, very kind of very wounded inner child. And we couldn't work out initially what was going on. But what was interesting about where this so that was the pattern, right? The energetic block, which was interesting, started when they were in their mother's womb. Now, what had happened was they weren't a planned pregnancy. They were the third out of, the baby out of 3 kids, last kid, and, they weren't planned. So you can only imagine when their mother found out that they were pregnant, there was an adjustment period. And even though they were born into a loving family, there was a lot of that kind of wrestling and trauma that the mother was going through in utero. And so it was interesting because that energy was passed to this particular person and it then translated into feeling rejected all the time in their relationships in life. So that was an interesting story.
How did the person discover that? What happened to the person in utero?
So, well, I actually discovered it because what happens is I work with sacred geometry, and I've got the tools, I guess, to read somebody's timeline, and I work out where it happened, what was the inception point. And so when I was reading this person, I got a very, very strong intuitive hit that I needed to go back to gestation. And in that reading, I had a very strong sense of rejection. I didn't know that they weren't a planned pregnancy, but I had a very strong sense, excuse me, of a feeling, an energetic feeling of rejection, not being wanted. And so what happens is whenever I do these readings afterwards, the person talks about what they went through, then I share what happened. And when I spoke to that person, they then went back to their family and they asked, and yes, indeed, they weren't planned. They were very loved, but initially they weren't planned. So I picked up the inception point, which they went and corroborated.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating.
That clearly requires a lot of intuitive work on your part and years of training. Is there anything that as listeners we could do for ourselves that would be helpful to us?
To build your intuition?
Well, in seeing about an energy block or removing, if we're really stuck, what we could do.
Yeah, well, if you're really stuck, I would recommend going to work with somebody. But I can give your listeners very simple, very basic tools on how to, understand, tune in, protect, all of that stuff. So would you like me to go through some basic and fundamental tools?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay,
yeah,
I can do that. So these things aren't going to go to the root. What I'm about to tell you is not going to go to the root of an energy block, but it is going to matter. It is going to help. Right. So, I mean, in order to understand your energy and to get a higher level consciousness around your blocks, your patterns, as they occur, it's actually really important to be able to read your energy. And a very, very simple tool that I teach people or I share it's the energetic check-in, to set an alarm on your mobile phone. And you can go, you can set it 3 times a day. I used to do that, morning, midday, evening, or you can do it on the hour. There's been times where I've done it on the hour. And when the alarm clock goes off, really just to take a minute out of your day, sit quietly and ask yourself a very simple question. How am I feeling? And just sense into it. Or is my energy heavy or is it light? That's a nice question as well. So that's a very simple tool people can do to really get in touch with their energy. Now, if you feel like your energy is low, well, there are different things that you could do. I mean, you can protect your energy from if you're in a particular toxic environment, you can protect your energy. So a very, very simple way of doing that is to, define your personal boundaries, choose your company wisely, say no when necessary without feeling guilty. So really start to do some of those behavioral boundary management things. You can prioritize self-care, so make time for activities that recharge or rejuvenate you, things like exercise, hobbies. For me, baking, I get into the kitchen, ensuring you get enough sleep, maintaining a healthy diet, drinking lots of water, limiting information, so being really mindful about the information you consume. There are all sorts of things you can do to protect your energy if you find out that it's feeling low. And then to kind of clear your energy, simple ways to do that is to use nature to do that. So for me personally, I really enjoy fire energy. It transmutes. And so, I go into the sun for 5-10 minutes if I'm feeling flat. It always lifts me. It transmutes energy. For other people, water does it. So get into a bath, take a shower, take a salt bath. and just dedicate your bath time to cleansing your energy. You can set the intention before you go get into the bath. And water is a conductor of energy, so it's going to move energy and clear you as well. So there are lots of simple things that we can do that will help us maintain our energy.
Interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I could imagine that there might be some people listening who think, I think this is rubbish.
Yeah.
What do you say to people when you describe what you do who go, oh, really? I mean, they just think they're just very skeptical.
Yeah. Well, I typically don't encounter very much of that because it's self-selecting. So when people contact me, they've either through word of mouth or they already, understand the value of it. So what I don't try and convince people because I'm a firm believer that there are multiple paths to healing. And, energy work isn't the only modality that I use. I use psychological tactics, and some people say that's rubbish. So, the convergence of multiple paths take you to the same place, and that's absolutely fine. What I would say to skeptics, though, is, skeptics have good reasons to be skeptical because energy healing is not quite part of today's modus operandi, even though if you go onto the Cleveland Clinic website, you will see they offer Reiki as a complementary modality, and other, I think Johns Hopkins as well. So skeptics believe things when there's evidence. So what we need to do, and what I would shift the conversation into, is what constitutes evidence. Now, energy healing modalities like Reiki, like the one I use, like acupuncture, all of these things, they're rooted in ancient wisdom. And these practices, have been around, like traditional medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, they've been around for thousands of years. And they haven't necessarily gone through Western-based scientific proof, which would be, controlled trials, pharmaceutical testing. But what they do have is they have extensive clinical observation. So what that means is, patients have come in, they have been observed by the healer, and they've deemed to be responding to the treatment. Their symptoms have subsided. So just because there isn't a pharmaceutical sponsored study doesn't mean a modality cannot or does not work. So I'd probably, if I was really pushing to the argument, go down that route.
Yeah, I oftentimes think that when people talk about, well, is that a double-blind study, controlled study?
Yeah.
That is a good testing ground for some things. It may not be the best testing ground for everything.
Absolutely.
And so we use, in the West, that's exclusively what we think proves something.
Yeah.
And
it's
one way.
Yes.
It's one way.
It's one way. And it's definitely got to say, listen, I come from a long line of Western doctors. I'm for Western medicine, but I do look at the explosion of the discipline of integrative medicine. It's really exploded when people, doctors, scientists are coming to understand the integral link between the mind and the body. And that's why when you go onto these websites, you see adjunct treatments, for cancer and whatnot. You see things like acupuncture, Reiki, they are being offered on the top hospitals' websites. So, it's starting to open up.
Yeah, I think it's, in my opinion, I would think this. So, anybody listening say, well, Sarah, you would think that. But I do think that anybody now who can't open their mind to the possibility of this is really closed-minded, because our physics talk about it. I mean, we know it from that everything is energy. How can you argue with that? Anyway, I won't get on that soapbox, but I think that I love what you said. I love that some of the top medical places in the country are including complementary medicine. I'm not going to call it alternative, because I think the two complement each other. Well, Eastern and Western medicine, let's put it together. Let's not have an either or.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's
So
exactly
tell me,
right.
Gabrielle, for women who may be listening, who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, I believe face transitions. I think if women are maturing healthily, they're gonna get to those points. So how can energy work help them with these transformations that they're making?
Well, as we spoke about earlier, when you work with your energy, when you clear it, when you raise your vibration, it has a direct link to your ability to be resilient because you're at a higher level, you're going through tough change, whatever that may be, and your energy you are coming off a higher base. So think of it in this way. It's like, say your energy is up 35, like an aeroplane, 35,000 feet up in the air. It's vibrating high, and you've got life changes and transformation on Earth. It's difficult for those changes to really hit the aeroplane that you're on because there's just too big of a gap. So what it does in elevating your energy, it builds your stamina, it builds your resilience, and it means that you aren't as affected. You aren't pulled down as much by these changes. So you've got more clarity, you've got more focus, you've got more self-belief. It's just the whole resilience package that's what I'm doing. I'm building your energetic capacity to be more resilient, to cope with more. I'm expanding your energetic capacity. Think of it as another nice metaphor. Think of it as a different size coffee cups, So you've got those huge Starbucks mugs, and you've got a little espresso cup. What I'm doing is I'm expanding your espresso cup to become a Starbucks coffee cup so you can handle more. The capacity to deal with adversity, trials and tribulations, all of those things, is just that much more.
You've mentioned Reiki and acupuncture. What are the modalities of energy work?
Well, acupuncture is one. I mean, there's so many. Reiki is very, very common. I do a form of energy healing that's probably as similar to Reiki than it is to other things. So I use advanced sacred geometry to do healing. So that's another modality. For other people, if I want to get really, trendy, the Wim Hof breathing and those ice baths have become very in vogue and are apparently I haven't tried them and I'm unlikely to, but the thought of getting into an ice bath is not appealing to me. But those things apparently just leave you feeling invigorated, empowered. They're different things that Qigong. I would throw yoga into the mix because I've been doing yoga for about 30 years and it is a very real physical way of shifting energy and working with the chakras. So they are just different modalities. And chances are your listeners have heard of a number of them.
I'm willing to try any of that, but not the cold stuff.
No, me too.
I hate being I would feel like I was being punished. I wouldn't feel
Me too. I do a Sunday morning meditation group. Every Sunday morning we go down to the local beach, which is, a couple of minutes from here. And there are, about 6 of us, and we've got somebody leads the meditation. It's a Vedic meditation. And afterwards they always go swimming. And 2 weeks ago they said, "You've got to come swimming." I said, "Are you crazy? It's winter here now. It's starting to get winter. I'm not going into the water." And even if it was summer, I wouldn't get into the water at 6:30 in the morning. And they said, "Come, you promised us you're coming next week." So I said, "Okay, I'll try." And thankfully, it was rained out. So we didn't do the meditation. So I didn't have to get into the water. But I think I'm packing my trunks for next week. No, it's not a thing for me.
me either. No,
But people swear by it. They really
I know
do.
they do. I know they do. The closest I ever came to that was I was on a ski trip once up in the mountains, and we were in a ski lodge that had a steam room and then a cold plunge outside. And I did that. once
Oh,
or twice just
oh,
to see it because everybody said, "Oh, it's wonderful. That's so healthy."
yeah.
And I would leave the steam room and I would be so nice and warm, and then I'd go out and yeah.
Oh.
I think this is nuts. I mean, really. I mean, so we all find our own thing. We find our.
We all find our own thing. It's something other people use, which I bring in small quantities, is breath work. So, that's another form of moving energy, and, so that's another one. And people swear by that as well. So
Right.
there are different ways of doing this. Yeah.
What's next for you, Gabrielle? What are you learning next? Do you have anything in the future that you're looking forward to learning and doing?
Yeah. Well, yes, I am. I'm getting into the world of keynote speaking, and that's a new one for me.
What is the name of it?
Keynote speaking, speaking.
Oh, keynote speaking. Yes,
keynote
yes.
speaking, yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of presentations, worked in the corporate world for many years. So, but what I want to do is I want to get my message out to the masses. And, when you do keynotes, you've got a couple of hundred people audience in one hit. And to me, that's where I'm going. And I did an inquiry yesterday, and what I'm going to be focusing on, my topic, going to be slightly different. There's going to be a corporate one, there's going to be an individual focused one, but the golden thread is going to be around how do you find gratification and fulfillment in dark times, during adversity, transformation, when you are healing, because people fear it. I feared it for so long. I put it off for years, but there is such profound joy that can be found when you're finding yourself. And that's what I want to teach corporates. How do you unlock that when you're going through big change? And that's what I want to teach individuals who are on a kind of a transformation journey, personal transformation journey. So that's what's next.
That's exciting. Good for you. Good luck.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I could imagine, Gabrielle, that people are going to want to get in touch with you. So how can they do that?
Well, they can follow me on Instagram. They can DM me on Instagram, Gabrielle.Pimstone. But I'd recommend you go to my website. It's generative.com.au. You will see there's some freebies. I know people, like to play around before they commit. There's a wonderful experiential masterclass on finding or accessing the energy of your future self, which is vital for manifestation. There are a host of resources there, guided meditations. There are also, you learn a little bit about some of my offerings, how I work, and there are different ways to get hold of me. So if you feel drawn to contact me, choose from 6 or 7 different ways of doing that on the website.
And yeah, do you do any of your work online? Like if people are not where you are?
I do all my work online.
Okay.
Even when they are here. I had a while ago, I had somebody come. They actually was based in Sydney, which was unusual for me. And I made the mistake of offering them. I said, "Do you want to do it virtually? Do you want to come to me?" And they said, "No, they want to come to me." And I said, "Are you sure?" And they said, "Yes, I've got young kids at home. I need to get out the house." A bad mistake, because when they arrived, I actually moved to another room. I still did it virtually anyway. And the reason for that is, I'm working on your chakras. You're going to feel, if I'm working on your throat, working on your heart, you're going to feel my presence. And I don't want you to feel that. I want you to have a transcendent experience. So I've got the tools to bring your energetic body in front of me, work on you, work on it as if you were in front of me, and you just lie back and relax.
Okay. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Gabrielle.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So that's our time for today. Please join us again. You can find our Prime Spark podcast on every popular outlet. Find out more about Prime Spark at primesparkwomen.com. Thank you again so much to my guest, Gabrielle Pimstone. And don't forget, you can find her at generative.com.au. Thank you for being with us. Take care, spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark, to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.